Welcome to New Hope Underground, the home of everything you have ever wished for in life. Today's episode is entitled Swedish Dining and COVID-19 is All the Rage. And now here are your hosts, Darren and Charla Hansen.
Hey, welcome to New Hope Underground, and we have a special session today. Special session? What do you call this? Special episode. That's what we call this. Special episode today. We're going to talk about something no one's talked about for, I don't know, the last year at least, and that is COVID-19. I know. Okay, so I'm pulling your leg. But, no, we are going to talk about it. But, I mean, obviously it's been the old rage. But today is going to be a little bit of a different feel. Drew has been really busy doing school stuff. And so I have my wife here together with me today, Charla Hansen.
That is me.
We might as well just keep having Hansens on.
Definitely.
We've had lots of Hansens on, so.
There's a lot of Hansens.
For some reason, I have access to Hansens. But anyway, she's with me today, and she's kind of had a unique perspective, I guess, in some ways, of COVID this last year. Is that fair to say? In the sense of, from other people. I mean, not unique in the sense of like you're by yourself, but I mean unique in the sense of most people listening.
Probably. Yeah, I would say that's probably true.
Yeah. And part of it, why don't you go ahead and explain? Well, tell you what, we're going to get into this a little bit deeper as we get in through the podcast, because we have a good show for you today. We're going to talk about some news stories like we always do, the real news, as we always like to call it, because it's unfettered from the media machines that are out there. It's more of a real raw news, because nobody cares whether or not it's false or spin.
Raw news?
Yeah.
Real raw news?
Real raw news.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's compelling.
In fact, I'm thinking about starting my own news channel called Real Raw News, RRN. But anyway, I always wanted one of those microphones with the big letters on the microphones.
That
RRN,
would be fun.
Real Raw News, coming to you from the New Hope Underground. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk in our second part today. We're going to talk a little bit about lessons learned, and that's when we'll get into kind of your more unique experience, for lack of a better term. And then she's going to talk to us at the end. We're going to talk about our online church experience, because that's been all the rage this year. All the rage. You know, all churches are doing online something or other. And since you've been, to use a real Christian word that's been ordained by on high, since you have partaking of the online experience, I'd like to get your feedback on that. So that'll be good. So, hey, welcome, and pull up a chair and or an exercise bike or treadmill, or if you're walking or shopping, I don't know what you're doing. But whatever you're doing, it's better now because you're listening to us. So here is the news story. You ready?
I'm absolutely ready.
I ran into a couple news stories, actually, that kind of go hand in hand, like three of them, that are all reflecting kind of the same thing in general, which is just weird things that people have done during COVID-19.
Okay.
Since that's our theme today. And one thing that's been a challenge during COVID-19 has been dining.
Dining. Okay.
You know what I mean? And restaurants have had to shut down. You can't have people in your lobby. I mean,
especially challenging if you live in Illinois and you're buried in snow.
Exactly. I mean, there's those sorts of challenges it poses. But I've got friends that are restaurant owners. It's been a really hard time, for them. But people are trying to figure out ways how do you deliver curbside, all this kind of stuff,
Right.
Well, there's a restaurant now in Sweden that has overdone itself, in my opinion, when it comes to COVID-19. And not only that, but they are booked for like a long time because it's just become such the rage. And that's my phrase now I'm using all the time.
Rage?
The rage.
Oh, okay.
So picture this, if you will.
Okay.
A lone chair placed at a lone table in the middle of a Swedish field. And it might just be the hottest reservation in the COVID-19 area of dining. That's right. There's a restaurant in a Swedish village, which is just a population of about 100 people, in the middle of Sweden, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a field. It's just all they do is they tend to the needs of one diner a day.
Oh.
You sit at a table, one chair, one table, out in the middle of a field in Sweden by yourself. Now, you would think, hey, this sounds good, COVID-19, but someone would have to serve me, right? So someone's going to be around. No, that's not what happens. Patrons don't even meet their server. A 3-course vegetarian meal is sent to the table in a picnic basket via a 50-meter rope pulley, taking at least some of the social awkwardness out of eating alone.
Okay.
So in other words, they put the food in a basket, use a pulley system 50 meters away, and bring it to your table through the pulley system. You take it out of the basket, eat, put the stuff back in, send it back. You're done. Don't ever see anybody. Don't touch anybody. I mean, this is what COVID's all about.
I have a lot of questions about this. A whole lot of questions.
All right, start. Go ahead. Fire.
Well, first of all, if it's in the middle of a field, why just one diner? Because if it's a really big field, you could have 2 diners 100 meters apart from each other, which is incredibly safe.
Well, maybe they're starting off slow. You know, they'll expand a table at a time. It's in a small village of people, just over 100 people. So if you think about it, one diner, maybe their thing is this, that some people, COVID, regardless of, COVID or what, maybe they just want to be alone.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Maybe they're tired of being with their family and they want a lone meal by themselves in the middle of nowhere where nobody's talking to them.
Yeah.
I would enjoy that.
Don't you think some moms of young children would pay big money to have that meal?
I think moms, I think wives, maybe some husbands, but mostly wives.
Maybe some husbands.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think people of both sexes.
I think probably their kids might appreciate it even more than the parents.
Yeah, maybe a kid trying to get away from their parents.
But I have another question.
Okay.
And maybe this is just me, but I'm not. I'm kind of skeptical. I'm a little bit monk-like from the TV show.
Right.
I'm going to be a little bit skeptical of a picnic basket that comes in on a pulley as being, one, safe to eat. Two, I have a lot of questions. How long has that basket been sitting there?
Well, I'm sure since they're pitching this as a COVID-safe environment, I'm sure they're sanitizing everything. I mean, and you're a restaurant too, so you have, you got certain standards you got to uphold.
Well, see, I'm envisioning it's outdoors, it's a picnic basket. You open your picnic basket, and inside is like, I don't know, bugs. I just can't do that.
Well, they're only 50 meters away, and they're putting it in and sending it to you straight away. The bugs have to be pretty darn quick.
Okay, then that brings another question. If you're supposed to be totally alone and you're not interacting, are they camouflaged then when they're sending the basket over? Because if I can see them...
That's a good question.
If I can see them, then they might as well be standing next to me.
I don't know, but that's a really good point. I don't know. I don't really know.
Maybe we could try this around here?
I don't know. Maybe. Give it a shot. We have a field across the street from our house. As we're looking out the window right now, we can see it. Maybe we could throw up a chair and a table out there and see what happens.
I think we could do that. I'm pretty sure that the scavenger birds and especially the crows would probably interfere with that.
My problem is not the birds. My problem is having to do a pulley system because I'd mess it up bad. I can't even do those, what do you call those, ratchet straps. I had a hard time.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say
carrying
that.
A mattress in a truck yesterday. Well, let's just say I had to pick it up off the road because I don't know what I'm doing with ratchet straps, which are the hardest thing. I mean, I don't know why God created those. But anyway, moving on. Now, that was one story.
Okay.
The second story, crazy things during COVID-19, is that there was a man in Barcelona who basically wanted to get out and run. He was a runner. So, but COVID-19 disrupted his plans last March when he was going to run a marathon. So he decided he would run anyway. The problem is he lives in an apartment, and he didn't want to get out. So he figured out there's basically he has a 23-foot balcony, and he decided it took him 6 hours and 48 minutes, which is significantly slower than his 3.5 hour marathon best. Okay, but it took him 6 hours 48 minutes, but he ran the entire marathon in his apartment. 42 kilometers back and forth. 26 miles. In his 23-foot balcony.
I applaud his dedication. That's really ingenious.
Is that a word for it? Ingenious?
I feel like he needs to buy apology gifts for his neighbors, because even if they couldn't hear him or feel him running, from the vibration, they had to see that. And that's borderline crazy.
Well, six hours. I can't even think of 6 hours of just pacing in your apartment.
Wait.
Let alone running.
Wait. Back up. You have paced pretty darn close to 6 hours.
No, I don't think 6 hours.
Well, it feels like 6 hours.
Well, then I should get some sort of medal.
I don't know.
For like a pacing marathon medal or something.
I have a cooler marathon story.
What's that?
A guy I went to school with, you actually know him. He lives in Charleston still. His name is Darren as well. He's a marathon runner. And last year, because of COVID, I think it was the Christie Clinic Marathon, or I could be wrong.
Something around here.
One of the marathons that he was going to run in. It was a full marathon, so maybe it was, I don't know. It was a big marathon. It was canceled. And he was really heartbroken because he's trained for years and he's run several marathons, and it's just a big part of who he is. Well, the online community got together in our area and they actually marked out a marathon for him.
Oh, wow.
And he ran it and people recorded it, and he had people along the roads cheering him on.
Now, how big was his apartment?
He has a house. So he went outside.
He was outside. They were outside cheering him on.
I can't imagine what it was like during COVID, like when everything was first happening and nobody knew what was going on, in countries where they would tell you not to leave your house.
Right.
Because I'd kill people.
Well, I think that's what happened here. This guy was from Barcelona. Actually, he was going to compete in the Barcelona Marathon, but he's actually from France.
Well, I understand.
And
I guess
he probably had some restrictions, so he had to stay in the. This is March when this thing kicked off.
Right, and it's a more densely populated area, whereas we live in the middle of nowhere, and if we go outside, we're still very, very far away from people. So.
Yeah, exactly, and we have one table and one chair out there if we want to eat. He doesn't have that. Okay, so here's the third story.
Okay.
Another crazy one, and this is recent. Okay, there was a man that was going to California, taking an airplane, and ended up at Chicago O'Hare Airport on his way out to California, but then freaked out, decided that because of the coronavirus, he did not want to go home to California. Now, this, I say recent, but I mean like within the last few months, I think. Decided he did not want to go back out to California. So he actually stole a badge of an operations manager there somewhere in O'Hare Airport, and he lived in the airport for 3 straight days behind the scenes, in like some of the work tunnels, work areas.
Wow.
And lived, now check this out, didn't have any money, so he lived off the food that was given to him by strangers.
Huh.
So does this...
Okay, this brings more questions.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I have questions as well. Go ahead.
Okay, first question. I understand maybe being freaked out, not wanting to go back because the media was playing out California as being the center of death. So, for a while. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. He's in an airport.
Right.
And he's getting food from people.
And how did he get to the airport?
Yeah. And
in Chicago. Because he decided to travel.
Yeah.
During this time.
He's begging for food, basically, from people.
Yes.
So he's trusting, one, that it's sanitary, and two, he's close to them while he's getting the food, and lots of questions there.
If he's getting questions or food from strangers, there's got to be contact.
Exactly.
From strangers.
Right.
I mean, what's the difference whether it's in Chicago or in California?
There's zero difference.
Apparently, he thought there was a difference. The California people were just spreading COVID like crazy, whereas people in Chicago were not.
Right.
That leads me to my next question: is did he read the papers, or did he pay attention to media whatsoever? Because Chicago was a hotbed.
It was a hotbed.
And has been a hotbed from day one.
No, maybe here's another aspect.
I don't get it.
Maybe he was just afraid to get on the plane because I think, I have no hard data to back this up, but if I were to gather, because of COVID, that airports are probably one of the most sanitary places to be.
I just find this fascinating because this guy wasn't that old, and I think, to me, it just sounds like an entire
media thing?
stunt.
Yeah,
like,
it sounds a little bit like.
I mean, he steals a badge. He's going to get arrested for this. He knows it.
He could have just hung out in an airport for 3 days and nobody would have noticed.
I know. Why did he feel he felt like he had to go behind the scenes to, I don't know what.
I have a question.
Maybe he was looking for like cake in the fridge of the break room or something.
Maybe he's just trying to see how many cool places he could get into, or if he could get himself a job.
I think that's when he got caught. It's like the whole coronavirus. Who knows if he was ahead of the California?
It's kind of disappointing. Just 3 days. You don't really garner a whole lot of attention for that.
Yeah, you know what?
It's kind of like,
you know what he needs?
What a failure.
The punishment for him needs to be, he needs to be sent to Sweden and sat down at that table in the middle of the field by himself for a long time.
And watch the guy run back and forth on his balcony.
There you go. Hey, coronavirus stuff, it just makes you do crazy things. Yep, this is our COVID episode, which seems like, way late in the process are we having this episode.
Maybe you were in denial.
Well, the truth is we've talked about it, obviously, a lot before because that's what's been going on this year. So that's been very much part of the conversation. I think the realization of the fact that it's not going to go away anytime soon. I think a lot of people really thought, hey, started last March, by this March, we're in March now, a year removed, that it would be over. We'd be through it or whatever, but it's still hanging on. And now they're talking about other strains and everything else, and we don't know what's going to happen. We take day by day. But I just thought it'd be good to get your perspective on lessons learned during the time for this last year, especially with COVID. Drew and I talked about this once before, but I think that I go to work. I work from home as much as we can, but I also go to work. I'm out running around all the time doing our errands, things like that, because I don't have any underlying health issues. You've had some underlying health issues. It's not the same for you to get out and run around like it is for me. So your experience this year has been different than mine. So I thought that's what's interesting about COVID is that you can have people under the same roof and have two totally different experiences for the past year in some ways. So I was just curious, like, lessons learned in COVID, and you get the floor. How about that?
That's terrifying, but kind of cool. Lessons learned in COVID.
Yeah, because I think it's safe to say, I think the audience needs to know that you've been pretty much have. There have been times of quarantine, like when I had it for a while, and so you were quarantined, and then we had family that had it, so we were isolated or quarantined for certain amounts of time. But for the most part, you've kind of had a self-imposed quarantine for an extended amount of time because of health issues. That's what I was saying, and so that's why I think your perspective is a little bit different. So that's what I mean. What kind of lessons have you learned from this extended time?
Well, I learned one that Netflix has a lot of TV shows that I haven't watched. So, no, that's just joking. I think
we don't even have Netflix, do we?
I know. Well, I kind of hijacked it from a friend for a while. So, yeah, just for a short time.
You can't say that on air.
Yeah. I think I don't know if it's really a lesson learned much as an observation. How incredibly polarized the whole topic is, which everybody knows, it's nothing new, but simply my personal choices of how I chose to protect myself and my family were scrutinized. And I thought that was interesting. And also...
You mean in general or specifically?
Both.
Okay.
Both. But I also think it's very clear. I want people to understand, while yes, I did isolate, it wasn't just you and I. We had a pod, and the pod that I chose was, which I realize people will say, well, how's that different than anything else? Because all of those people are around other people. Yes, but they're also very cautious because they're cautious for me and they're cautious for each other. But we chose our family to be our pod. So we had our children and their spouses and our grandkids in our pod. And I think I would have gone crazy had it not been for them to be out and to go visit and spend time with them. Although knowing each and every time that we got together as a big group, it was a potential risk. And that actually played out at Christmas when, surprisingly, one ended up positive, who was contagious at Christmas, but then nobody else got it.
Yeah, that
was
surprising.
Pretty miraculous.
But we decided we got to have Christmas.
We have to. Yeah. And because that was one thing I was looking back thinking, I'm not going to regret spending time with my kids. I would... Now, Grant, we didn't have your mom and stepdad come over and they didn't want to, because they're much more fragile than even I would be. And so I'm grateful that they didn't put themselves potentially in harm's way. But at the same time, I would never have regretted even if I had gotten it and ended up in terrible shape.
So what's the lesson learned then?
The lesson learned for me is how important family communication is. And also, honestly, I kept in touch with some very close friends throughout all of it. And it just goes to show you don't have to, and I know everybody knows this as an adult when you grow up, you don't have to spend your every waking moment with someone to be their, for lack of a better term, BFF. You just don't. You can talk to each other, you can encourage each other. It's not, you miss that time together,
sure.
but it kind of in some ways deepens a relationship, because you can't just talk about silly things all the time when you're texting or calling. You want to talk about serious things. So
how much because we live in the media age, and like you said, it's been very polarizing in various ways, just election year too. So, all this stuff, but what do you learn from that? What's your takeaway? Like, because I've got the opinion that I don't need to listen to everything.
Correct.
I don't need all that, and don't choose to listen to everything. I'm not on social media a lot, a little bit here and there, just to stay in touch with some people. But that's about it. But I'm just curious, like, what lesson have you learned in the sense of, like, in the middle of all this provocation that could happen because what people say and do and post?
I've learned, as somebody who was very tuned into social media prior, and you had a job in social media, it was a huge part of my life. Because of all of this, I really backed away significantly. That's a lot of voices and a lot of input and a lot of conflict and a lot of opinions that just really don't matter. And when it comes down to anything.
Yeah.
And I think for me, what I learned is that I have to quiet the voices for my own mental health. I know that sounds so silly. And everybody claims that right now, but it's really true. You have so many voices and so many opinions, and everybody's right. And I have good friends on one side of the subject and good friends on another side of the subject. So where I landed was I just don't have an opinion because I don't have all the information. All I can do is try to trust the people that are closest to me to come to conclusions if I have to come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I've tried to stay away from a lot of media. Now, I did follow a lot of the COVID stuff just because the medical aspect of it is fascinating to me. But even got to a point where I was like, everything's so sensationalized
And skewed.
It really is.
Yeah, so it's spun, for lack of a better term.
It really is. And it's hard you can't really trust.
Right.
And then when it all comes down to it, to your daily life, does it even affect your daily life? Does it affect my relationship with Christ? Does it affect how I treat the people around me? If it does, then maybe there's a problem there. So
the lesson learned is that I think a lot of people probably learned this lesson without even realizing it, is that social media is not what you thought it was.
Oh, no. It's destructive.
It can be a really bad tool in the hands, It could also be a good tool. But I mean, I think the thing is, everybody knew that a little bit, but I think in going into this coronavirus year, it's even, it's probably taught a few people some lessons. I'm not sure exactly where I heard this quote, but I just think it's amazing, which is so true. Self-expression is killing community.
It really is.
And I think that's true. Like, the self-expression, everybody feels like they have a right to express themselves, and it's almost become an idol in and of itself. Mm-hmm. That we I love when I read Philippians and I see like Jesus became human. He purposely could have, as a human on earth, could have done all sorts of things as God and wiped out all sorts of people and everything, but he didn't. He chose not to use his divine powers at times that he could have. So in other words, just because you have the power or the say or the right or the voice doesn't mean that you should elect to say what you want to say.
No, that's so true.
There's wisdom in withholding, not just. So that's a good lesson. So.
Well, one thing which reminds me of this, is one thing that we always told our kids growing up is, you know what, you may say something and you may regret saying it and you can apologize for it, but those words are never erased.
Right.
They're forever. And
it's like toothpaste coming out of a tube of toothpaste. You can't put it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that has really stuck with me through all of this. And I'm questioning myself, like, as I go back, I know this is funny, but I'm sure a lot of people do this. When you check in, like on Facebook or whatever, you can check on your memories and see what you posted on that day, like all the way back to, like, for me, like 12 years ago. And when I see the stuff I posted then, here's the thing I'm noticing. One, it was a lot of fun back then because it wasn't politics. It wasn't, everything wasn't a commercial for somebody's multi-level marketing, and everything wasn't politics, and everything wasn't a recipe or a comparison. It was literally just a place where you just said what was going on, and people would comment on it. And then as you look through and you see how the heaviness changes through the years, they go from something just kind of lighthearted to something that's intense. I don't see that as something that's beneficial to society.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is now.
Yeah.
So, but I think you've spelled out a couple of really good lessons.
Yeah.
One being is that how true your circle of family, friends is, and how much they mean to you. And second, you kind of learn that through this year. Other thing you learn through this year is just how to navigate social media a little bit better, and and maybe
use those tools they give you.
Back away a little bit. Yeah. So I think those are really, really good. Hey, we're going to move on and talk about church online experience here in just a little bit. Stay with us. Hey, what's going on at New Hope Church? Well, hey, let me tell you, we got a few things coming up. One is Easter, Resurrection Sunday coming up the very first Sunday in April. And we are actually going to have 2 services on Saturday night that weekend and 2 services on Sunday, on Easter Sunday. So check out your schedule. Make sure you attend one of those and bring somebody. We're having 4 services so that you can bring somebody, have plenty of room, family, friends, and come celebrate with us. Hey, check out our groups too. We have a group starting right after Easter. It's for 4 weeks on a Sunday morning. It's in person. or you can actually Zoom if you want. We can do both. But it's with Matt Jones. Matt's going to be teaching through a series, basically a series that we're going through on Sunday mornings for 4 weeks after Easter. We'll meet on those Sundays, so you can go to service one of the service times and go to group with Matt during the other service time. And if you've never joined a group, this is a great one to get started in. It's only for 4 weeks, and we're going to be talking about the sermons and the material that goes with some material that goes with the sermons as we're going through that series right after Easter. So check that out. And then also don't forget Shelbyville. We have the For Shelbyville campaign going on right now. We're trying to raise money so we can without any debt, take care of the renovations that we need to in the building. That as we get started in Shelbyville, and hopefully soon we'll be starting Sunday morning services in Shelbyville. So hey, that's fantastic. Kind of got you caught up. One thing that's been interesting, I want to ask since Charlotte's here, is she pretty much attends church online.
Correct.
So, and has for the past year. Now, we talked about how that's all the rage. Every church is doing something online, and it's because, just like the restaurants having to figure out curbside, how do you minister to people during the time of COVID when a lot of people were afraid to come out, and we had restrictions. So we couldn't necessarily. For a while there, we were shut down entirely just for a short time, and then we came back, but we had restrictions on seating, et cetera, et cetera. And also you have a lot of people who just, even now, like yourself, who health reasons or whatever, have decided to worship with us online continually. I'm just kind of curious, like, to give us, what's that been like for you? Like, what do you enjoy about it? What do you miss about Sunday morning attending?
Well, first I will say that I don't just watch New Hope online. I don't want that. And here's why. I live in a town that I grew up in, so when everybody switched to online services, it gave me an opportunity to kind of quote unquote visit my home church, and also visit my sister's churches who live in other parts of the United States. And so I've enjoyed that. Now here's the thing. On a Sunday morning though, I'm always at New Hope, and I always tune in live, mostly as a connection to be with other people, because I know either if I'm not there, then I'm at least connecting with people online. Except for the few times like when my internet connection was bad, so then I'd have to catch it later.
What?
But yeah, I know.
The internet connection is never bad. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Yeah. But I have really, really enjoyed it. And I hope it's something that churches continue, because I think there's a lot of value in it. I can't see us moving forward out of COVID, and when I say out of COVID, knowing that COVID's here forever, but I can't see us moving forward not incorporating some sort of online worship across the board for everybody, because I think people are going to be cautious when they're sick. I don't think you're going to go to church and hear people coughing as much in the sanctuary as it used to be, like, where it sounded sort of like I don't know, some sort of hospital. But I think people will be really cautious, and because they love people. But I think it's a great option for moms of littles who are sick, for those who are sick, those who are away and still want to connect. If you're working, it's a great opportunity to be able to catch the service later and still feel connected. It's great to see the people who are leading worship, to see the pastors who are preaching. I do have one critique.
Go for it.
Across the board, there's one thing that I feel like is really missing. And I think that when people are planning these services, they're not thinking this. But as an online viewer, I want to see the people that are there.
Oh, yeah.
I want to see a camera pointed out that shows the congregation every once in a while. I want to see those people's faces that I've missed.
We've actually talked about that. Part of it on our part is just lack of equipment.
Right. And I'm sure that's a huge issue for a lot of churches, because they weren't really expecting it, which brings me to another thing. It's been fascinating to see the difference in churches, ones who have maybe have the resources to be able to have the nice equipment and do things like that, which on a side note has been also really cool, because I've heard of a lot of churches sharing their equipment and offering to record for other churches and things like that. And that's a really great
It's also
thing.
some churches, some guy just setting up his phone.
I was going to say, that's the next thing. And you can tell a huge difference. And I feel bad for him because a lot of times the audio isn't as good. But you know what? It's really sweet.
Well, they're just trying to connect with the people in their church. So.
And I will tell you this. Usually in those churches that are real simple with just a guy recording with the phone, you do see everybody in the congregation because they have their phone back. It's well lit. You know what's going on because they don't have the fancy auditorium. But they usually have to turn it on really early because they're talking to everybody. So you see all these people milling about. And I love that. I want to see that. I want to see that.
There's a degree of, I mean, I appreciate the fact we're doing online services too, but there's something in the back of my mind, though, that just wants me to, I don't know, that just makes me think, okay, but this isn't it. Like, it's fine to have a service and watch it or whatever, but it doesn't mean you're really a part of it yet still.
No.
And I'm not so sure that just, I'm not trying to, the thing is, it's a fine line for me. And the reason is because when we're in this context, we're talking about a service on a Sunday morning. But how do you move people from like going to church to being the church, kind of thing? How do we, if we're never in contact with one another, if we just...
Right.
And I know that's been a struggle for you because you're at home. I know what you believe about it, but I'm just curious your thoughts real quick.
Well, I think it's definitely a problem. I think it'd be real easy to, well, just like it is on a Sunday morning, to get into the consumer aspect and mindset, which you just go and you watch a service and then you leave. It's the same thing. You just turn it on and then you go about your day like, oh, I checked that off my box. I participated.
Which may not be any different than somebody who actually is there bodily.
It's very, very true. I know for me,
it's your mindset.
Right. For me, what I missed was, what I have missed and what I do miss is feeling the connection with other people of purpose. And I really can't define what that is exactly, other than just knowing. However, I will say it's caused me to think outside of the box. We live in the country, but at the same time, we have neighbors, close neighbors, because of the quote unquote compound we live on all around us. And this has caused me to reach out to them more than I ever have. And talking to them and giving them food, dropping off bread, doing whatever, just trying to, even if it's just a quick, 2-minute text or just a quick hello in the yard, I feel like more contact and more intentional conversations are happening now than they ever did pre-COVID.
Oh, that's great. I think you stumbled on something that I really want to accentuate, and that is this, that it really is about mindset. You could come here on a Sunday morning to New Hope and be here bodily, but that doesn't mean you're here spiritually or mentally sometimes. And also still not have any connection. You could leave. You could be just as anonymous as you want to be. We don't try to force anybody into uncomfortable circumstances or just have you stand up, introduce yourself or anything like that, and purposely. So yeah, you could be anonymous if you want. But that's my question is that good enough for you? If you're a Christian, if you're a believer, if you're someone who's following Jesus, is that good enough? It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. So you've got to find a way for community to happen. And it may not be, I think for us to relegate it just to a Sunday morning only service is faulty. In other words, you could go to service every Sunday and still not have any community. So it really is about your mindset. So even though you're watching online, what are you doing about community anyway?
I think one thing that I'm thinking about all of this, that's as you're talking, one thing that's sticking out in my mind is that there really is a difference between going to church or watching church and thinking of yourself and being, quote unquote, being fed and thinking about what you're getting. Did I enjoy the service? Did I? Versus going, watching, or connecting with people who live around you, or going to church and watching in the service of the people that are hurting and getting outside of yourself. And I think sometimes that there's a confusion on what community is. For me, when I think community, it's not just people that I hang around with all the time. For me, community is knowing what's going on, and not in a Gladys Kravitz sort of way, not a gossip way, but knowing, oh my gosh, they're hurting. What can I do to help them? I think that's, to me, that's what community is. It's being connected in a way that it's beyond surface.
That's really good. Thanks for pulling out the basically the reference to Bewitched.
You're welcome.
That's always a good thing here to happen here on Underground.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, thank you everybody for listening. We're going to be back next week. Actually, I hope to have a couple special episodes. I'm going to be in Florida, so I'm going to interview my brother, Brant Hansen. So hopefully you guys will enjoy that. So come back and listen. We'll see you later.